everybody. Hello. Are we live? Did we do it? Did it work? It's working. Hi. Hello. How are you all? Welcome back to the best day of the week because it's Teaching Tuesday. Yay. It doesn't feel like a Tuesday, does it? It kind of feels, I know we're all, working from home and time kind of doesn't matter anymore, but it definitely feels like a Monday. I hope everyone had a safe and healthy Memorial Day. Thank you to everyone who has served, is currently serving, protecting our country. We at Mount Vernon thank you extremely deeply and sincerely. And welcome to Teaching Tuesday. I see some people are already checking in. You guys all know the drill. Let's get our roll call started. Let's see where people are visiting from. Adam's here, Pat's here. We got Alex in Ohio. Hello, Aaron. Okay, so are we teachers? Are we students? Are we museum professionals? Do we have any museum professionals out there joining us? Do we have any just history enthusiasts? Where are we? And do we have any first timers? Do we have any Teaching Tuesday first timers? I see a lot of returning visitors. And I'm sorry, I just so excited that we have a new first timer. Can everyone say hi to Lori? Hi, Lori. Welcome to Teaching Tuesday. We're so excited you're here. A history nerd, David, you're in the right spot. We're all, hello, Shauna, a teacher from Houston. I'm loving this. Everything is just people. We got a history enthusiast. I'm looking up, not only is she a teacher, she's a first timer. So we need to say hi to Shauna. Welcome, welcome. I know I say this every week, but we got a great day. We got a great program ready for you guys. And I'm just going to go ahead and just break the ice right now. It's just going to be you and me in this. It's just going to be you and me. I'm not phoning a friend this week. We're back to our original, everybody here together, just, the OGs of Teaching Tuesday, you and me. So thank you guys so much. It looks like we got East Coast, we got West Coast, we got the Midwest. So excited everyone's here. We are going to be playing v. Washington today. Yay! Oh, how many of you guys are so excited about that? I am so excited about us playing v. Washington. And I will give a full disclaimer. After last time when we broke the internet, Al Gore called and said we're not allowed to do that again. So what we're going to do is we're going to play a single player and play it all together instead of trying to do a big game. And I'll explain all that as we go. But you got to get excited because we are going to be playing v. Washington, and we're going to be playing a scenario about his time in the Revolutionary War as commander-in-chief. Because some of you may remember, and you have access to it in our archives if you weren't here for it, but we did play v. Washington. We played the Whiskey Rebellion. So this scenario lets us put ourselves in the boots of Washington, look through his eyes at these challenges that he's facing, hear from his advisors, hear from people in the field about what's going on again in the country, and then we get to make a decision on how we would lead. We get to decide how the country should go forward. The two challenges are from his presidency, and two challenges are from his time as commander-in-chief of the Revolutionary, or of the Continental Army. And that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be heading kind of back in time, and we're going to be playing v. Washington. and looking at Washington's role as commander. So I'm so excited to do this. I'm loving Kimberly's enthusiasm. Yes, let's break the internet again. Why not, right? So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna share my screen with you guys because I'm really good at this. We're really good at sharing our screen. And this is the Washington. And it is a great classroom activity that I do want to highlight for teachers and for parents at home. These scenarios are really awesome. And there are two ways to play. Last time we played, when we destroyed the internet, we did a multiplayer game. But this week we're gonna play our single player. And the way this is gonna go is everything's gonna run through our screen here. Okay. We're gonna hear the scenarios happen. In the comments, this is what I need you. Even though we're doing a single player game, I still need you to be active during this. Because as our advisors talk, tell me, are you agreeing? Are you disagreeing? As we look at the advisors that Washington's listening to, tell me what advisors you want to hear from. You can use the comments, type the name, type if you agree, type if you don't. And then at the very end, we're going to take a vote. And again, in the comment section, I need you guys to vote on what you would do if you were placed in the role of Washington in this situation. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. I see it. We're about 6 minutes in. So without further ado, let's get this game started. Okay. So we're going to play the Newburgh Conspiracy. And hopefully some people, this is a great introduction to something you've never studied about Washington before. Okay. So I'm going to mute my mic. That was my bad. I'm going to get you guys sound. I have that coming up. Sorry. Okay, we're going to do this again.
Welcome to the B. Washington Interactive Theater. Soon, it will be your turn to test your leadership and decision-making skills in a crisis General Washington faced during the Revolutionary War. Here's the situation. It is the fall of 1782. We've been at war with the British for over 7 years. Peace negotiations are underway after our decisive victory in Yorktown, Virginia the year before. But all is not well among the officers of the Continental Army. Throughout the Revolutionary War, the Continental Army has suffered shortages of food and supplies. Congress has struggled repeatedly to pay the men. Some are owed years of back pay. There's not much General Washington can do other than write letters on behalf of his soldiers.
General Lincoln, I will inform you candidly of the discontents which at this moment prevail universally throughout the army. The complaint of evils are the total want of money, the heavy debts they have already incurred, the distress of their families at home, and the prospect of poverty and misery before them. The patience and long sufferance of the army are almost exhausted. There never was so great a spirit of discontent as at this instant.
In March of 1783, the Continental Army is camped 60 miles north of New York City, which is still under British occupation. Although peace negotiations are underway, the army is still needed to defend against potential British attack. But within the officers' ranks, discontent is growing. Some fear that if the war is to end before Congress can settle its debts, they will return home impoverished. Some officers decide to take matters into their own hands.
Gentlemen, what's this about? It's an anonymous address to the officers of the Continental Army.
Gentlemen, a fellow soldier whose future may be as desperate as yours would beg leave to address you. Have you not more than once suggested your wishes and made known your wants to Congress? How have you been answered? If this be your treatment while you wear the swords necessary for the defense of America, what then can you expect when peace arrives?
But if your spirit should revolt at this, to oppose tyranny under whatever garb it may assume, then awake, attend to your situation. In any political event,
the army has an alternative. The author proposes that the army threaten to refuse to lay down its weapons in news of peace, or refuse to defend the country from attack. He has called for a meeting tomorrow at 11 o'clock to discuss his proposal.
The authors of the anonymous letter have called a meeting without General Washington's approval to discuss threatening the government into repaying the soldiers. You are about to step into the boots of General Washington. As Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army, will you arrest the authors of the anonymous letter for treason? Will you try to convince the officers to ignore the inflammatory letter and continue to remain patient? Or will you use your influence as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army to pressure Congress to act? Just like General Washington, you will have to make your decision under pressure as the situation continues to evolve. You'll be able to seek advice from various advisors who will represent people and sources General Washington would have consulted. But be aware, they will offer contradictory opinions, and you will not have time to hear from everyone. It will be up to you alone to decide how strongly you agree or disagree with their advice and whether they will impact your decision as the commander of the Continental Army. Now is your chance to be Washington. It's your turn to lead.
This crisis can help us strengthen the American Union. The officers and soldiers suffer because Congress does not have the authority to tax the states. Now is the time to act. The claims of the army, urged with moderation but with firmness, may operate on those weak minds in Congress. By threatening Congress, we may help them to gain the necessary power to tax, and we'll gain just compensation for the officers and soldiers.
I consider the reputation of the American Army as one of the most immaculate things on earth, and that we should even suffer wrongs and injuries to the utmost verge of toleration, rather than sully it in the least degree. Now, the influence of the Army is a sharp point, which I hope in God will never be directed but against the enemies of the liberties of America.
A country that ignores the needs of its veterans will fail. Great men who have proven their worth and can be trusted with power have a responsibility to create balance in times of crisis and inaction. A virtuous army who've bled in the name of liberty can be a balancing source of power. Cross the Rubicon.
News has reached Philadelphia that the British have approved the preliminary articles of peace. A peace treaty could be not far off. The
Congress does not settle its debts to the officers before the treaty is signed, we may be on the verge of a mutiny.
News of peace could inflame the officers to act on the threats in the anonymous letter before the army is disbanded and they are sent home penniless. Will this affect your decision? You now have 3 new advisors to hear from.
And expel the corrupt legislators. Support your officers and pressure the legislature to act.
Our families fled Long Island over 6 years ago when the enemy obtained possession of our land. We had no other means of subsistence than to serve the army laundering clothes while our husbands fought on the field of battle. It is the only way we have been able to feed our children and keep our families together. If pay is withheld from our husbands, we must all starve together or commit acts which may involve us in ruin. We don't want charity, only fair pay for honest work. Do not let Congress abandon us now. General Washington, support your officers and pressure Congress to act.
With the war ending, the army needs to be sent home. The standing armies and the taxes needed to support them are the tools of despotic government. The army cannot be trusted. Remember those that nobly opposed Caesar, who destroyed the freedoms of Rome. Arrest the conspirators for treason.
A second anonymous address was discovered with the general orders this morning. It claims General Washington supports the threats to Congress.
Well, how is that so?
If he did not condone the demands, why does he let us meet?
Gentlemen, I think you all know why we are here.
Gentlemen, I apologize for my appearance, but the situation has rendered it necessary that I give my sentiments to the army directly.
To be tame and unprovoked when injuries press hard upon you is more than weakness. Have you not more than once made your wishes known to Congress? If this is how they treat us while we wear the swords in defense of America, then what can we expect once peace comes? How can we
Time's up. Your advisors have spoken. This is a reflection of how much you agreed or disagreed with their advice. As commander of the Continental Army, it is up to you alone to make the decision. Will you arrest the conspirators for treason? Will you convince the officers to remain patient? Or will you use your influence and pressure Congress to act? You have 10 seconds to cast your vote, starting now. The results are in. The group is deadlocked. The votes are evenly split. Now let's find out what General Washington decided to do.
This dreadful alternative of either deserting our country in the extremest hour of her distress or turning our army against it, which is the apparent object, has something so shocking in it that humanity revolts at the idea. My God, what could this writer have in view by recommending such measures? Can he be a friend to this army? Can he be a friend to this country? Or rather, is he not an insidious foe? And let me conjure you in the name of our common country to express your utmost horror and detestation of the man who wishes under any specious pretense to overturn the liberties of our country and deluge our rising empire in blood. I would like to read to you a letter from the Virginia Congressman Joseph Jones, who has become a fast friend of this army. Gentlemen, I beg your indulgence. I have grown gray in your service and now find myself going blind. Those acquainted with the deliberations of public bodies, and especially of so mixed a body as that of Congress, will understand that allowances must be made for slow determination. I am pleased to report that 7 states have voted for 5 years whole pay to the Army, and we hope to get the last 2 votes soon.
Shortly after Washington left the meeting, the officers passed a resolution vowing to ignore the threats in the anonymous letter and to remain patient. Washington's speech would become known as the Newburgh Address. 6 months later, the Treaty of Paris was signed and the revolution was officially over. America's first army peacefully disbanded, and Congress ultimately passed legislation for payment to the soldiers and officers. Before the year ended, General Washington resigned as Commander-in-Chief of the Army and returned to Mount Vernon as a civilian. Through his words and actions, General Washington set the precedent that America's Army is, and always will be, under the control of our civilian government.
Okay. What'd you all think? Isn't that such a moving moment? I saw some of you tearing up in the audience out there. Absolutely. So I want to talk about this with some time that we have left. Let's talk about this Newburgh conspiracy. And so I went through and I looked at all your results, your voting. Okay? And so lucky for us, no one chose, from what I could see, we didn't have many votes for A, which was to arrest our officers for treason. So that's good. So everyone's staying together in the Army. I'm just kind of reading our comments. I just love these. Okay, but let's talk about, they keep popping up. Let's talk about the most popular. So the most popular choice that people chose was C, and that was to pressure Congress to act. Okay, so in the comments, let's talk out that decision. What does pressure Congress to ask mean kind of in its bare form? Is Washington, are they asking Washington to just politely send a letter to Congress like, hey, could you please help us? Or are they asking Washington, the commander with the military behind him, to maybe use a little extra force and pressure to throw support behind the Army and the pay? Okay. I want to hear your comments on what that choice actually really, really states at its core. So Cynthia's kind of on it here that, yeah, the latter. The Army wants force. Exactly right. So it's not just and so what do we kind of call, when a military uses a little force to go take over a government? What's another name that we use to describe that? Lori's saying the same thing. The military wants force. Ooh, Maisie's got a great, it's a coup, right? Carla's talking about it's a coup. Scarlet, right? These are all other names. And that's kind of what's at the heart of this. So I'm really, really intrigued by our audience choosing C, because a lot of people are really interested. If we talk about those advisors, some people get interested that Caesar happens to pop up as an advisor, but Washington, he would have had a classical education. He would have been reading these and studying the history about it. And so I'm pulling up Lance here. He's got a great point. Many revolutions, this could have easily turned into a dictatorship, right? This is not uncommon. Many, many revolutions happen this way. Let's see. Washington, yeah, it's a dictatorship. You guys are all kind of picking up on that. So they want that pressure. They want that force to take over because the peace is nerve-wracking, right? That I think is one of the things that surprised me about the Newburgh. At the end of the war, you think these individuals would be wanting that peace, but they're worried about the payment. They're worried about that support. And they're not sure if they're going to get it, if they have to go home. And so they are putting that pressure. But what does Washington choose? Let's talk about, here, let's see what Adam's saying. Isn't that a great connection too? Newburgh's address, when Washington addressed, it's March 15th. It is March 15th, 1783. Adam, I love this connection. Absolutely. Okay. So let's talk about, so there were some advisors, right, that were really pushing for that. But let's talk about the decision Washington made. What was Washington's decision? He didn't arrest them for treason. He didn't pressure Congress to act. He chose B. And a lot of you chose that as well. And that was to ask the country or the officers to remain patient. Because he didn't want to go down that path. He didn't want to go down that dictator role, correct? I'm looking at some of these comments. I think that this is something that we can talk about. Yeah, Washington, I mean, these advisors are, Washington is constantly studying history. He's constantly studying the history of political history, military history, pulling ideas and influence from all over his backgrounds. These are great comments coming through. But so Washington, he decides to give it back. He decides to push his officers to remain patient. He pulls this letter out, as Kimberly's saying. He proved that Congress was moving, but just a little slower, and that he is still the military's best advocate. And this is really important. And I think that one of the things that we like to talk about when we talk about Washington and his leadership, it's not always what he does when he takes power to lead, but it's ways that he holds onto that power and then gives up the power that makes Washington so important, makes him such a leader, and separates the American Revolution than many that has actually happened in the past, and stops it from the dictatorship. And so it's those moments where he chooses, to step back as the leader, to hold back, that prove to be just as powerful as those days when he is pushing forward, in the field or as president making those decisions. If we think about last week, a lot of you were here last week when we talked about the farewell address, right? That's Washington stepping down, handing that power back over. and saying that the president doesn't rule for life. Teaching them how to say goodbye is the connection that a lot of you made in our last week. And that's happening here. This is really kind of one of those first times. I'm pulling up some of these comments here that are just great. It's the first time Washington is showing them, leading by example, that the power needs to be in the people, and that the power needs to be from that civilian government and those Republican ideas that they fought for. And that's the reminder, and that's what he's pushing through, and he does that again when he retires from the military and the farewell address. And I love this comment right here about including the glasses and the gray hair, and how that is. Because by Washington saying, I too have gone blind in your service, I have gone gray, he is admitting, I suffered with you too, right? I lost things. We have all suffered through this together. And I'm going to continue to stand by your side in this. And I'm going to continue to wait with you just a little bit longer. Let us continue that work together, fighting for that republic, fighting for those civil liberties that we pushed through. And I just feel like this is just a great, wonderful example, showcasing, really giving that empathy, that personal touch of Washington that he brought in to all of his leadership decisions that we've seen before. I'm sorry, I'm just getting distracted because I'm reading all your comments, and they're so wonderful. And these are just items. This is just another great example of Washington making that connection and using him to separate himself from other leaders of the past. Sorry, I'm just so distracted. I don't even know what to talk about with this. It's just such a moving piece and puts Washington, right in there with his soldiers. And I'd love to hear from teachers. How do you connect this type of leadership of Washington in the classroom? This may not be, I'm going to pull up Amelia here because she is bringing up a great, whoops, people are, they slip too fast. He could have been a king, but he decided not to. He's a great, what Washington did, what we always say about Washington is he's a great military leader that looks at that strategic plan. And when that strategic plan, it's where you plan out not only what you want to happen, but what you don't want to happen. And so working towards that. And so making sure that your goals align with those strategic plans to plan out to get the results that you want and to make sure that those definite results are the ones that you don't. People are coming up here with all different amazing connections to Washington. I'd love to talk about some of the advisors. Was there an advisor for anyone out there that really captivated you? Was there an advisor that you really, even though that may have not been the ultimate decision Washington made, was there an advisor that you really grasped to, who really made that plea and you really felt that plight? I'm going to wait and have people bring it up. I know a lot of people were shouting out for Hamilton. And here, actually, the Wallace House and Old Dutch Parsonage. I love this. We're talking with other historical sites, comments on advisors. And they brought up the Caesar advisor. And that Caesar, the great Washington's looking to him for advice, but Washington's decisions, he's separating himself. He's looking at what happened to Caesar. He's looking at that advice. You kind of understood that. And then he gets to make decisions on how to change that. And you're right, Washington was not Caesar, but Cincinnatus. And Cincinnatus was another general in the Roman army who gave up power. He did not cross the Rubicon like Caesar. He gave that power up and gave it back to the people. And that is what Washington goes to be known for. Here we go. Knox was kind of waffling. He expressed the right sentiment, but didn't seem to have a plan. Ooh, Carla, the laundress put the suffering of families into perspective. Ooh, I like Paul's here. It was interesting how Hamilton suggested finding opportunity in the crisis, but that's a bit frightening. Isn't that, I mean, to kind of use it as, use that dismay, use that chaos. Absolutely. Oh, these are great. It is quite a bit frightening. I just keep rereading it. Oops, I'm just clicking buttons here. As Scarlett said, that's so Hamilton to use that as an opportunity. And so, I mean, this is hard to take all of this advice and make these decisions. But I think that's one of our favorite things about B. Washington, is that we get to hear all this and then put our own spin and look at it in a different way, and really see the hardships that it came with the leaders. And really kind of be reflective on it, as Macy is saying here. Awesome. Well, that's B. Washington. That is the scenario for the Newburgh Address. If you guys remember, I'm just going to show you where it is again, because as always, everything that we do here at Teaching Tuesdays starts and ends on our online learning page. This is where we put that great hub to play it. And B. Washington, right here in the interactive learning and media, it's that very first tab. And as we played it today, we played it as the single player. I'm just going to pull it up here now to explain it, but it is also has that option if your classroom has one-to-one learning, if your classroom has multiple computers, you have multiple tabs, you can host a game where the students have on their own devices, their own computers, all this information, and they're listening to their own advisors. They're choosing along, and then they're making their vote, and you can see how that vote goes among the class. So please definitely check this out. It is absolutely one of our great uses for the classroom, and can be played multiple ways, just like we did it today, but also as that group setting. The last thing I want to showcase and share with you is just to give a little sneak peek about what we're doing next week, because we're going to go back to the online learning page, and we are going to go back to our primary sources. One of the great things we have yet to really highlight are some of the object collections that Mount Vernon has. That really is truly an incredible collection filled with amazing artifacts and objects of the Washington family. And so right here in our museum collection under this tab you see here, we are going to do an object analysis on one of the fine, fancy objects that George and Martha Washington owned, and find out what we can learn about their life, but also, per usual, about all the lives of those that lived at Mount Vernon. So please come back. We are going to be here at the same time, same place, Tuesday. I'll stop sharing my screen so I can officially say goodbye. Tuesday at noon, we're going to be here working through this. So get excited because it's right back to those primary sources. It's right back to that analysis that we've been doing. I'm phoning in another friend because we are so popular that people are nonstop asking us to join. And I can't wait to introduce you to my colleague, Alyssa Oginski, former teacher turned teacher program manager. It's great. It's an incredible opportunity. We will see you guys next week. And I hope you all stay safe in the meantime. It's getting a little warm for our teaching sweaters, but that's fine. That's fine because we're in this for the long haul. All of us here together. So primary sources, object analysis, Tuesday at noon, right here, okay? Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Bye. I can edit.